Alright, how's it going, everybody? So, a couple of videos back, we did the defensive guide for the game. So now we are talking about offense, obviously the more fun aspect. But I do feel in this game, especially, that both offense and defense are very strong. Obviously, offensively, you're more inclined to obviously lean towards whatever your character can do. Defensively, obviously, characters have, like, I talked about, like, reversals and obviously mash button. But offense is a little bit more tricky because your offensive capabilities really vary depending on your character. But I'm going to try to keep it as universal as possible. I will talk about certain aspects of certain characters that I might have. But I'm not going to keep it super character specific. So that's why I have Gran and Vegeta here to demonstrate like universal offense in a way. So obviously, the important thing about the game, or any fighting game, especially in a game like this, is the plus frames, obviously. So if you're plus, obviously it gives you more offense. There's a couple things that are plus in the game. The most plus thing in the game, besides like certain special moves, is obviously your close jab. Your close jab is always +4. I don't think any character in the game doesn't have a +4 jab. And then obviously your far standing light is plus. I think at least almost the entire cast is a plus standing jab. I could be wrong, but... And then some characters have a plus heavy attack. I know Fairy and I believe Sori's has one. But most characters don't. So that's just one small aspect. But jabs, for the most part, are plus. Crouch jabs are usually always -2. Gran's -2. G's -2. Most characters are -2. They obviously depend. They vary if they are a low attack or not. So obviously Gran's is low. Vegeta's is low, but the character I play, Belial, is not a low, so that does change depending on the character. And then obviously you have your auto combo stuff. So in the game, right, or in OG Granblue, you had obviously just a regular basic auto combo, but in this game you can obviously do a high attack and a low attack ender, and they're both safe. They're both -4. It obviously ends your turn, but you know, they are safe. There is no 4-frame move besides throw, which you're not in throw range for. Oops. You're not in throw range, so you can't get punished by these. But, I will demonstrate, though. The low version, you are +30. You are very, very plus. The high attack version, though, you are only +1, which is not bad. So, obviously, in most cases, and obviously in most fighting games, people are going to be crouch blocking to avoid most stuff. So, you're more likely to get this kind of hit versus the low attack version. But, you know, take a little bit of damage or +1, continues the offense, but it isn't super bad for the opponent. But it does exist. Also, certain characters do have plus frame medium attacks, or usually they're cross mediums. Bala has one, Gran has one. There's a couple characters that do. Most characters don't, but it is something you can play around with, which we will talk about in a minute when we talk about this move, 6XL. Yeah, we will talk about the 6XL kind of pressure in a second. There's usually two variations of what you can do after this. And then also, you have Raging Strike. Raging Strike is very powerful. We will explain to why it is so strong, especially early game. And we obviously have your 6XM and 6XH, which are also options in offense. So, now that we've covered all of the basics, let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about your close normals. So close normals are very, very strong because they are +4 for, I think, basically the entire cast. There's obviously usually super close. Obviously not throw. You can't throw immediately. But even the slightest walk up, you are in range to throw. Which makes it probably your best option in order to get throw. Obviously because you're +4, you really can't mash. So a very common frame trap, you would say, in this game would be 5L, 5H. Because you are +4, you're so plus, you're easy to like even just like walk up slightly. Or another really popular option. This is kind of very Street Fighter-esque in 6. Going from close normal to your crouch light attack. If you have one. If you don't have one, it's a little bit obviously less effective. But most characters in the game have one. So this is also very good. Because then obviously you could chain on hit confirm to get into whatever you want. But if you don't have one, usually the 5H option is pretty good. Or even just walk up jab again. Like, this is incredibly powerful for a lot of reasons. Besides having the frame trap, this is also really good against Raging Strike. Because if they decide to Raging Strike on block... Actually, I don't know how I'll set this up, but you can take my word for it. If they decide to Raging Strike on block and they're at a block stun, you can easily, like, they can easily just get the Raging Strike. You get a full combo, obviously, because it's really slow. I want to see if I can demonstrate that, actually. I want to be able to show you what that would look like. Actually, yeah, we speak it. It's on block, but yes, perfect. Okay. So yeah, for example, if I'm like doing jab and I see him do it, or even like jab, walk up jab, this leads to them doing Raging Strike by accident when they want to do Brave Counter. And let's say they do get a Brave Counter off, like that could happen. So let's say they do get like a Brave Counter off, like for whatever reason, right? This is pretty good for you because on jab, oops, give me a second. On jab, oh my bad, I did crouch jab for a second. You can block it. You can immediately block it. So even though they become +6, you don't get knocked back. So yeah, close jabs are very strong. Close jabs are incredibly strong in this game. Everyone has them that are very plus. It leads to a lot of good scenarios for you. Obviously, the other version of that would be the far jab. Far jab is also very good. It could vary depending on the character. But this comes in tie with 6-6L, which we'll talk about in a second. But just to wrap up for the 5L portion, yeah, 5L, close 5L, really strong. Leads into good frame traps. Leads into, if you have a crouch, light attack is also very strong. Walk up throw is really good here. Yeah, don't be afraid to use walk up jab. Walk up jab is really good, especially if you're up close. You can chain this into 6XL, which is probably not the best option, but yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do off of close jab. But next we'll talk about 4L, which I mentioned a second ago. This is also really good for pressure because this leads into 6XL pressure. So depending on your character, if you have a crouch medium attack, this is also really good because they're both the same. And crouch mediums are obviously a lot farther. And if you have a crouch medium that's plus, it gives you a little bit more offensive pressure off of 6XL. So the main scenario you do here is obviously 6XL, 5L. If they mash, they lose, obviously, because 6XL is +2. And obviously, if they press anything else, they'll lose to this option. Or obviously 6XL again, because you get up close. Or 6XL run up, right? Or 6XL crouch jab, you could do that as well. Obviously, you're not plus, but... Or walk up, you know, walk up close jab, and you start that pressure game again. So yeah, there's a couple different scenarios. The main scenario is obviously doing 6XL 5L, because it's your best frame trap. And then everything else is a little bit more greedy than that, but this is really strong. Obviously, they can check you after this. If you do 6XL, 6XL, they can obviously press jab. But if you press 6XL, 5L, they'll lose. But afterwards, you can't do 6XL again. This is obviously negative. So you could do your 5L and do 5M, which is still, you're going to be plus. But basically, after this, your pressure string is going to end. So... and like I said, this will vary if you have a plus medium attack. If you have a plus medium attack, this becomes a little bit more enticing to do. Obviously, this becomes plus. This is obviously a frame trap because it's +1 into a medium attack. So if you have one, it's pretty rare to have a plus medium attack. Granblue has one. I'm trying to think who else has one. I can't think of too many characters that have it. Those are the only characters I know off the top of my head. But... yeah, but obviously every character has a plus 5L. I'm pretty sure about that. So this is obviously if you don't have a 2M that's plus, your 5L is going to be your main way to cause that pressure situation, which is very nice. So let's talk about Raging Strike real quick because this is a pretty good topic. Raging Strike, obviously, if you hit them, you could do a follow-up. Most characters will break it if they have a gem. And obviously, the good scenario is if you catch them with one gem, they can't break anymore. You get a full back combo, which is obviously insane. But most people, once they have one gem, are very aware of doing spot dodge. Like, they're not going to really get hit by Raging Strike. But this is why I think early on is actually really good, especially if you get like a knockdown situation. Knockdown situation, run up, get it on meaty is really good because this takes away... Avalanche. Obviously, don't do it like right next to them, but you have like a little bit of leeway. You could do it like on their wake up, and obviously they'll break, which means they'll lose 2 gems, right? As long as you have meter, obviously. Do it when you have a little bit of meter that you can follow up for, so you can threaten the follow up. But they'll lose 2 gems right away. If you do this early in a round, this becomes really strong because then you can do it again. They have to always worry about that in the back of their mind. And you have an incredibly... your damage output obviously increases by a lot because them having 1 gem... I don't forget the numbers exactly, but obviously the less gems you have, the less your defensive modifier becomes lower and lower. So doing this early in a round is really strong. Obviously don't do it all the time, but if you're, you know, like last round situation, you want to sneak this in, this gives you a huge advantage going into a final round. This is like incredibly strong to do. Obviously you can do it late too if the player isn't aware, but in my opinion, early on in a round, super powerful. Really, really strong, especially on their wake up. On their wake up doing it, it's like really, like most people don't expect them, most people don't expect you to do it. So yeah, definitely utilize your Raging Strike a little bit more early on in the game. The other offensive thing too is obviously like character dependent. If your character does like a plus move for whatever reason, obviously this is gonna increase your offensive options. But for a character like Gran doesn't have anything like that. Their main string obviously is the jabs and stuff like that. But Gran does have a plus fireball, so he does have that option. But another thing I also see a lot is like the throw game. Like I feel like people always say, oh, like they always able to tech throw. Like how do I get people to like stop them from teching throw? Like it seems like everybody's always so good at teching throw that can never get a throw off. So obviously 2 techs of throws. This of course, your delay tech, which you're +6, but you're quite far, which means you get a 6XL, obviously, or you can get a run up, throw again. It's a little bit more greedy, but you can do this as well. And then obviously the regular option, which leaves you neutral, which obviously you do get no offense for, is you get a normal throw tech. But we'll talk about this one first because this was obviously a little bit more, I feel like more common. I feel like most people are pretty good at delay teching because all you have to do is press a button. So how do I beat this option, right? Or what do I do after this? Obviously, like I said, you can run up throw again. You can do 6XL. But this becomes really strong for you because you can run up really far, really deep, and just kind of sit there and then, like, you can stop on a dime, right? And then, like, oh, they're going to throw again. Oh, and then get a 5H, right? So your shimmy game here is actually really strong afterward because they're worried about, obviously, 6XL. So most people are not going to press buttons here. But then you can kind of stop. Or you can bait with the dump. Obviously, this also works too. This is a little bit more risky, but very like Street Fighter-esque. But yeah, off of the late tech, the late tech's actually really good because you do give them a lot of damage. Don't feel like just because they tech a throw or they delay tech a throw is like bad for you. This is really good. Like look how much damage this does, right? Off of a delay tech, you take a nice chunk of damage off of them. So don't feel bad if they delay tech. It's really good for you. You're +6. Obviously, you can throw them again. They might delay tech again. If you get 2 of them in a row, like 2 of them in a row is like that's a nice chunk of damage, right? And you're still plus. You still have offense too. So if they're constantly delay teching, it's still in your favor by a lot. So don't feel like it's a bad thing. You're doing good. But obviously, let's say they're just tagging throw. I feel like my throws are too obvious. What do I do about this, right? So the big thing is if you're in range for throw, right? Close jab is incredibly powerful, like I mentioned before. This makes it like almost impossible to like react tech. Like this is a straight up guess. Like if they're teching all of this, if you're constantly getting close jab and you're mixing up your close jab options and they're teching all the time, either you're being really obvious about it, which is really hard to do, or they're just, I don't know, they're just cheating. Because, like, this is incredibly hard to deal with. Like, close jab throw is, like, I have not run to a player yet, and I fight some very, very strong players that are constantly teching this clean every time, right? They might get a delay tech option, like I mentioned before, is still really good for you, but this sequence of, like, close jab, or close jab 5H, this is a guess. Like you're not gonna be able to clean tech this all the time. It's really hard. And then obviously you have the option of just like walking up and doing nothing. Like, just like slight walk up and do nothing. Or like just stand in place, right? Like if you get a close jab, like you're just out of throw range, but it becomes really dangerous. So like it becomes really dangerous to mash. It becomes really dangerous to do anything off a close jab. So if you're struggling, like let's say you're doing it from here and you throw tech, I can obviously understand if somebody's like who's really strong is just teching all of these. But this is where you want to mix in your, this is where you want to get in up close, like abuse the fact that you have 6XL and you want to be in this close jab range. Close jab is, I can't stress it enough. It is incredibly powerful for your offensive game, especially your throw game. Because this is like really obvious, so you have a lot of time to tech this. Obviously you have a crouch normal, this obviously becomes a little bit more dangerous. If you do 5L, like 5L run up, this becomes like a little bit more strong. But if you don't have that, you want to be using, more likely than not, you want to be getting up close again your close jab if you're going to run up, instead of throwing all the time. So definitely just be aware of your options. If you feel like they're throw teching all the time, especially off of your 5Ls, definitely mix it up by doing run up 5M, or run up 5H, or run up close jab, or run up do nothing, right? You want to mix in your throw options. And yeah, like I mentioned before, if they're delay teching, this is good for you. This is always good for you. You're never gonna be in a situation like, don't feel bad that even if they're teching every throw, if they're delay teching it, it's still good for you. So that's all the universal options for offense. Obviously, it can vary depending on your character, but oh, also I will mention this too. This is also really good for a nice. I would practice spacing this out depending on your character. Like Granz is really good. Granz is like, his is like really far. But definitely practice your 6-6M range, because I see a lot of like newer players don't utilize it as much. But obviously if you have a low option, if you have a high option, this isn't universal. Some characters have like cross overheads like Nier and Cagliostro. So, but for most characters, if you have a low option off of your 6-6M, definitely practice spacing that out, because this is like very useful. Because if you space it out, it's pretty safe. You can't really punish it for most ranges. And then your 6-6H is a little bit harder to space out, but again, also very safe if you do. So, obviously 6-6M, your plus is easy. You don't have to space it out, but I would definitely practice spacing out your 6-6M and your 6-6H, because these will also come into play offensively, which is going to be very useful for you, especially against characters who don't have a fireball. And if you have a fireball, they don't. This becomes like very easy to get like quick hits in. So yeah, but that's it for the offense. That's all I got for you universally. And then hopefully more character guides are coming soon. And shoutouts to Project Dell X, aka 2XKO. I'm gonna be making videos on that as well when more gameplay comes out. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
この番組はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。